So I started to crawl back to where we started from. I passed a dead Japanese soldier, and I knew that I was almost back, and as soon as I passed out, the medics came to me, and they started to work on me and put me in a Jeep. There was a Piper Cub waiting for the wounded. I was put into a wire basket and attached to the wing of the Piper Cub, and somebody else at the other end. And I said to myself, going through, that I'm coming in at a wing and a prayer. They got me to the MASH unit, and I was facing up, facing the top of the tent, and someone yelled out, "There's a big tree falling on the tent." I couldn't move, so I was just gazing. The doctor that ran out of the tent, the tree that was landed on a tent, landed on him. He had his thigh crushed, and they had to amputate at that moment. But they couldn't move the tree. I don't remember anything after that until I was wheeled out from a tent that was in Lady. I was in Luzon when I was wounded. And the stars were bright and just enough light for the orderlies to take me to the hospital. Why they operated in the tent, I wouldn't know. That I don't know. Anyway, I get into the hospital, and Lou Ayres, the conscientious objector, he was my orderly, and he was famous for All Quiet on the Western Front. Dr. Kildare, the Marines have landed, and he said, "Anything I could do for you, just let me know." I was in traction for a month and a half. Doctor came to me and he says, "I got good news and some bad news. Let me tell you the good news first. You're going home. The bad news, you have to go by boat, by ship, because of my chest wound." The next day, I was put into an ambulance, and just the thought of going home by boat for a month, 8,000 miles or so, they take me out and they put me on a tarmac of an airfield. And all I could see was 4 big giant propellers. And I'm in a stretcher all the while, and they put me into the plane. And when the plane takes off, a nurse says, "Anybody here with a chest wound, please let me know now so I know how to take care of you." We land in Guam for refueling in a rainstorm. The plane was almost going in every which direction, and we land in that storm. And the next day it was clear. We take off, and we get into we go to the United States. And they told us that we could make a free telephone call, one call. And I said, "I'm going to call my wife," because I was married 3 days before I went overseas. So I called her, and she says, "I knew it was you. I had a premonition." And they said to her, I said to her that I'll be going to Atlantic City, the England General Hospital. As I was going to that area, the plane had to be diverted to Mitchell Field. And my wife wanted to surprise me, so she went to Atlantic City. But the next week, she came again, and we got together. In other words, I made arrangements with the Red Cross for reservations to a hotel, and we discussed the times we had together, where I met her. She lived right across the street from me. And that's about the end of my story. I wrote a book, my World War II miracles. 10 years ago, or whenever it was the 50th anniversary of the end of the war, my daughter worked with B'nai B'rith, and she says, we need a couple stories about the war. So I wrote those 2 stories, one where I was taken away from a live mortar exercise to go to services. It was Yom Kippur that day, which I really forgot that it was. And as I was getting into the Jeep, the guy in front of me said, lend me your raincoat because you're going indoors, I'm not. And I gave him my coat, went to services. 2 hours later, come back, I got my raincoat back. It was full of holes, shredded, and he got hit in the neck with shrapnel, back, lost a foot, and he was in front of me. That would have landed right on top of me. The same sergeant that told me to go to services says, Jack, you're going to stay behind. We need somebody in headquarters, and you're going to be the representative for us and headquarters. They go into the Philippines, and they're supposed to take a town to San Jose. 200 men line up. Before they go out, G2 tells them there's only 2 tanks in town, very little infantry. But as 200 men line up, they come out of the rice paddies. There were 50 tanks in town. They all opened up with their machine guns, and 50 men died. There are so many stories in here. I thought me telling you about the being wounded was the most important.